Welcome, everybody. We're into the score here. My name is Avishai Darash. I'm going to be your host for this podcast. Into the Score is a podcast where I host my favorite artists, musicians, entrepreneurs in any field, and especially from the fields that I find interesting, which are music, culture, arts, politics, entrepreneurship, etc. And today I have with me Jessy Hay. He's a multifaceted guitar player known for his virtuosity, known for being able to play almost every genre possible, known for working in the pop scenes, the jazz scene, the Arabic scene. And I'm proud to call him my friend. I'm proud to actually say that we worked on extensively on different types of projects, such as Andalusian Love Song here, Modes of Makamat, check it out, it's great, Simurg Project, and Sahara Koyo, all from collaborations together with the Marmusha Orchestra. And here we are, Jessy.
How's it going?
Yo, what's up, man?
Good. Doing
Nice.
well. Looking
Nice.
forward to do this one.
Yeah, me too. I mean, we talked about it like a few months ago, I think.
I think so. I think you originally told me you have this plan. I love podcasts myself. A disclaimer. I love listening to them. I'm quite a fan of few regulars. So that's actually my first one participating. So looking forward.
Nice. The thing is that I know you as Ittai Glick, and I was wondering, I have a few questions about it because here I'm presenting you with Jessy Hay, and I never got a chance to ask you actually why Jessy Hay.
So long story short, about 7 years ago, I had, it's a whole story by itself, but I had a little chapter in my life where I went from being a session guitar player and writer for other artists into kind of like my own album as a singer-songwriter. It was an adventure. I went for roughly 2 years, went really deep, made a whole album, worked on it, and during the process of making this album as kind of like my own name in the front for the first time in my life, I had to come up with like a stage name. I figured the Ittai Glick is just kind of like difficult to immediately grasp and even more difficult to find and trace later on. So if people would look it up online, they will misspell it, and it would be very hard to actually just reach the socials or anything like that. So I started playing around with a bunch of names, and I figured out that, first of all, Jessy is actually the English version of Ittai. So Ittai is a biblical figure, and the Americanized, if you will, version of that's Jessy. And then Hay and Jessy, it's some sort of a not 100%, but almost accurate anagram of Ittai.
Yeah.
So I just played around with the letters, figured Jessy's way easier to find. Jessy Hay seemed like suitable, and then I kind of went with it. Originally, it was just meant for my own project as a singer and a singer-songwriter, if you will. But over time, I just realized why not just using it all throughout my projects, also as a sideman, and since there it stuck really. So then all the socials got that name, and before I knew it, everybody just knew me as Jessy. So I just played along with it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's the thing that when I heard it for the first time, I thought to myself, I kind of understand why you do it. We have names that are not that accessible.
Right.
Coming from Israel, it's like kind of like when we're breaking out of these scenes, it's like, for us, it's so normal. Ittai, Avishai, Darash, Glick, Menachem, this, whatever.
And I even misspelled my own name growing up in English.
Really?
So it would be even harder to find it because I actually don't spell it correctly.
Because you spell it like with an I in the end, right?
With a Y.
With a
it
Y.
It should have been an I, but I just somehow started with a Y being a kid, and since then it's stuck. So
I have to say it's a smart decision, because it's really easy to find it.
Exactly.
So we know each other for like 22 years. We know each other from Jerusalem. We know each other from the Tzolelet. We know each other from actually the small music scene that grew up there. And in a very interesting coincidence, we found each other also in the same city in Europe.
We didn't know of it. Yeah.
No, we didn't know. It was kind of like we kind of touched base, and it was like, "Hey, are you also going to Amsterdam?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, like this is cool." You know?
Yeah.
So, what is the thing that brought you to Amsterdam?
Well, the truth is, since I was very young, I knew I'm gonna study abroad, jazz performance. I was actually kind of aiming at Berklee College of Music in Boston for many, many years, since I was always surrounded by graduates from there. Our teacher in high school music department was a Berklee graduate.
Right.
After which I went to do my first Bachelor of Music in Rimon School next to Tel Aviv. And there I was surrounded by a lot of Berklee graduates as well. And during those years, there was some sort of a shared program. Ramon started doing some sort of a alliance with Berkeley in which you can do 2 years there and then graduate in Berkeley. So I was just a part of that program. I was ready to go to Berkeley. In fact, I was already enrolled, registered, got a scholarship to move to Boston. Everything was ready. I was already checking maps of the city of Boston. And literally the last week of school, Eitan Itzkovich, a drummer, he was the vice principal or something in Rimon. He took me to a conversation and actually kind of changed my life. He said, I know that you're very locked on US. Just know that there's some really great schools in Europe. Might have many advantages to go that route. Check it out. And I went home and I did a research and I kind of ended up with Conservatoire in Paris and the Jazz School Berlin and Conservatorium van Amsterdam. And I just fell in love immediately. It was really like a love from first sight. I saw it was a brand new building. Remember the Oosterdockskade building? The facilities looked insane. I saw Jesse van Ruler is teaching there. I knew his name from winning the Monk guitar competition many years before that. So I was immediately really intrigued. I figured I have a European passport. I can actually work. I will be closer to my family in terms of flying back and forth. There was like suddenly everything, like a plan of almost 10 years collapsed within a day. And I realized I'm canceling all of this plan and I'm moving to Holland instead. And I didn't know anyone. It was literally from scratch. I didn't know anything about it.
What was how long did it take you actually to make the decision?
I think probably...
Because I remember our audition was like June
I went
2010.
for the last day audition. So I literally went home and made the decision probably within 2 to 3 days.
Wow.
Called the conservatorium. Can I still audition for this year? They're like, well, if you can make it this Thursday, it's the last day. So I went on a first plane pretty much. Didn't know anyone, didn't know anything about the city. Went to do the audition. Was lucky enough that they really liked it, and they told me actually kind of on the spot, you're just in, so get your stuff ready. So I flew back, packed, flew back to Amsterdam, and started basically completely by myself. Didn't know anything about it. And yeah, like a plan of, man, I can't believe, I think nowadays in my current age, I will never dare to do such a change. But back then I just switched the whole plan, just like that, yeah.
Wow,
and I'm very glad I did, actually.
Wow, I really didn't know you did that. Yeah. That's really funny. Because the thing is, I mean, we come from Israel, and it's quite common to put like the US on a pedestal. That like either Berkeley or New School, Manhattan School of Music, or Juilliard, or
especially
Curtis.
in jazz music, I would say.
Exactly. So actually, that is clear, but I didn't know that it had such an impact. Just the conversation with Eitan, and then like basically immediately it took you like to that different.
It's just like I immediately started envisioning all these advantages that move would have, with how cheaper it is. Because I had a really nice scholarship for Berkeley, but that only covered the tuition. And I know that the living expenses would be very expensive, and I knew that I wouldn't be able to legally work to make money to pay those living expenses. So Europe I could work. It was such a shorter flight. And again, the building looked so good. I think, just the sheer fact that it was just this brand new building, which is still to this day, I think, one of the most impressive conservatoriums in the world in terms of facilities. I was just sold, man, like immediately. And I figured out it's like the most international school in the world. It's one of the most international cities in the world. That's something that always speaks to me. And man, I got kind of like, it was really a strong intuition telling me, you know what, that's the place for you, and not Boston. And then I saw my colleagues who ended up going to Boston finding themselves a few years later in some sort of an identity crisis where they're like, do I move to New York? Do I leave the US? Do I try to continue in the Boston scene? Am I gonna try, because New York, we all know, you've been there. I've been there. It's an amazing city. Still one of my favorite cities, but it's such a grind. And you could easily end up having the best time of your life or the worst time of your life. And I think a lot of jazz musicians kind of experience a little bit of both day to day, right?
It's a grind, man.
Yeah, and I could kind of skip that, you know? And so I was very happy. And with the years, I got my opportunity to go back to the US and tour with artists. So that was great, but I didn't have to go through that really difficult kind of first few years of really establishing yourself there and really struggling financially.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because when you had like when we would have these exchange programs of students coming from the States to Amsterdam, it was always like so evident that the life quality and the facilities and everything
They
is
were
just
shocked.
it's just like
What?
superior.
You have this here? It's just free? Like, man, how much do you pay per year? Man, you know, the prices nowadays of tuition in US is just insanity. It's insanity. It was already insanity 15 years ago when we were looking into it.
Exactly.
But now it's been, I heard of numbers reaching $50,000-$60,000
What for music
a year.
schools? For music schools?
Not even per se music school. The last figure I've heard was probably one Ivy League school or something like that. But man, I wouldn't be surprised if it would be close to the $40,000-$50,000 a year for music school as well nowadays, which we obviously never gonna make back. Especially not if you're a jazz or like art form musician. I mean, you know, it's gonna take you a while, you know, to pay that back.
7 years of like small gigs.
Exactly, man. You gotta play smalls gigs every night for like 571 years. You know, if you wanna like just pay back 1 year. Yeah, man, it's crazy.
Yeah, and it's also kind of like, I mean, that's just my opinion about it, but the school is really about creating the network and the contacts. Of course, you're learning, you're studying all that, but basically you're meeting and you're networking with your future professional peers, you know, so that's what it is. I don't know if it's worth the 200 grand. I'm not sure it's worth that.
Right.
And like getting into such a debt that is also, if you look at it, you're never going to come off it because it has like interest, like compounded interest, and you have people like having these hundreds of thousands of dollars, like just chasing them.
What a stress.
To a later age. And then here, I think we paid like 1,800 euros or something per year.
I think
as Europeans,
so. Right.
as Europeans.
Yeah, it's something ridiculous.
Yeah,
like
it's
literally in the thousands of percents of differences, you know, so everybody, you know, check out European institutes.
Exactly.
It's, you know, it's, I love it. I love it. I think education should be as cheap as it can be. Education is the key for a healthy society.
Right.
I'm a huge believer in good, you know, institutes. I'm a big admirer of some teachers I grew up with. They're a big part of who I became as a musician, as a person. I think a country's own interest is to enrich the education system as much as possible. And that. In that kind of term, I think that Europe, or at least Western Europe, or the ones I'm aware of, are doing a great job. It's not easy to be able to finance such schools. There's a lot of tax money going there. There's a lot of designated department in the government to be able to make that happen. But I'm really a big believer and supporter of that. And you know, the American system has its pros and cons. But when it comes to education, like you said, it's a very tough path, and in general, I mean, as you said, I saw school exactly like you did. In fact, when I came to Conservatorium van Amsterdam, I went there. I felt a little kind of, how should I say it, maybe a little overqualified because I kind of already graduated from a bachelor before, and to me it was exactly that. It wasn't so much to attend the classes as much as it was to be surrounded by like-minded musicians and musicians I really like, and be able to start, make projects, rehearse, learn from each other. Some of the greatest music I got to know was from recommendations of each other. I remember the first 2 years hangs every night.
Man, we were like, I mean, that's the thing. I remember these nights as like coming back from the conservatory, going to hang out in like an apartment.
Tons of friends from all over the world.
Tons of friends from like
every country,
like 15 different nationalities.
Amazing.
We're sitting and just listening to this like esoteric, like crazy stuff until very late, and then the next day you get up and you practice, and you're like in this like routine, and it's like again evident of the fact that it's about the community. It's not so much about the information that you're getting, because you could study music in a vacuum, but it wouldn't actually get to a point that reflects society 100%. If it doesn't come in contact with the community that it's serving, So that is beautiful. And that, like, this is something that I wanted to ask you also, because you're so multifaceted, like you have all these interests, like, I mean, we haven't worked with each other for many years, but then when we got to work with each other, it was like in the context of the Marmouche Orchestra, which is an orchestra that is kind of like championing the combination between Western and Eastern music, like through tradition to innovation, all that stuff. And you got really interested in like quarter tone music, makam, also your work with Karsu, and your pop music, and the jazz, and your singer-songwriter, and this. Was it always something that you thought you're going to do, like being so multifaceted, or was it something that the business kind of showed you, like, you should know a lot if you want to be able to survive? Like,
That's an interesting question. I think in retro perspective, if I look back, it was always in me, but maybe I wasn't very aware of it, because I think to start even further back, basically I'm a big nerd. I am just obsessed with general knowledge, regardless of music.
right.
Always been like that. Since I was a young child, I was obsessed with accumulating information, general knowledge, even extremely esoteric general knowledge. If you ask me about the bird life or geography, I'm a huge fan of history, huge fan of linguistics, etc. So many fields I'm just really into, and music would be the champion of them all. So I'm a huge music nerd before I'm even a musician myself, just as a music lover. And looking back, I actually grew up with many different types of music. I would also say that some of my biggest influences to make me later become a musician would be an album called Hakeves HaShisha Asar, which is a children album in Israel, which is kind of like a super group gathered together in a beautiful project to make a children music album. And they got the best session guys, the best writers, composers, lyricists, everything. And they all came together for a couple of days and they made this masterpiece, which is to this day one of my favorite albums of all time. And that album had a lot of like what we now know as like jazz harmony, a lot of quite complicated progressions, a lot of modulations, really rich music harmonically and melodically. Yeah. And I heard that constantly. And my parents worked very hard growing up. I was the last child of 5. I was a lot alone home. And I was surrounded.
Similar. Wow.
And I was left with a lot of like children cassettes, like stories with music that was composed, I later knew, by Mati Caspi, Yoni Rechter, a lot of incredible composers I'm big fan of. And so that kind of went into my subconscious, I guess, already then. But I wasn't even aware of it. And later on growing up, the first year I picked up a guitar, which is like, 12 years old or something like that. I was really, I remember, into like rock music, like a lot of, to name few, like, Metallica, Red Hot Chili Peppers, a huge Pink Floyd and Beatles fan from a young age. That, thank God, I got exposed to them because those were huge two influences of mine. And then towards high school, I really got into funk. Like I became obsessed with funk. So, like James Brown was like my god, everything to do with Funkadelic and even Tower of Power and, the Commodores, the Meters. And I really got into that. And I guess when we started in Solelet in our music high school program, I slowly got more into fusion somehow. So it was still kind of like rock attitude, but with minor melodic modes. And I was like, oh my God, that's really cool colors and sounds and phrasing. And I really got into that, but I still have the aesthetics of like, some distorted guitar.
It's a very nerd reference.
Yeah.
Like technical, theoretical nerd reference.
Absolutely. And to finish it off, I had to get accepted to Musikai Mitztayen, and that was a program that only auditioned for classical and jazz. They didn't allow any, pop music, funk musicians. So I really had to get into jazz. And to be honest, back then I didn't even like it. I didn't appreciate it. I went to a specialized guitar teacher for 1 year to teach me jazz, hardcore.
Who was that?
Dan Cohen.
Dan Cohen. Yeah. Dan Cohen.
And I really got into that and I hated it. I knew it's just for the audition. That's it. And luckily I managed to get the job. And when I started working there, I traveled 3 hours each side every day on public transport. So I had 6 hours to listen to music a day. And I had the iPod, first iPod back then. My friend filled it up with jazz music, like thousands of recordings, like the complete Charlie Parker recording, like compilation, like with all the false takes, alternative takes, everything. And I started listening to that daily. And I guess 3 months in, I realized kind of like just out of nowhere, I was like, I'm hooked. Oh my God. Like I would go to the bus and I was like, I have to listen to Clifford Brown. I really need some Clifford Brown now, and that's where I became really what you would call jazz police. Like suddenly everything turned. I started hating on everything else. I became very elitist when it comes to like jazz is the one form of music. So funny that you ask it. Sorry for the long answer, but
no, man.
To make it short,
it's a conversation.
For a couple of years, I was actually not very open to different styles. I was really just into jazz. And that's when we got to know each other.
Wow.
And only towards my graduation, I realized something burned in me. And I was like, wait, why actually don't you still do like, I mean, I love rock still, right? And I love, funk, and I love pop. I mean, man, Michael Jackson and
Right.
Prince were some of my heroes, So I'm like, why would you ignore that part of you for some sort of this heroism? Oh, I'm just artistic musician and everything else sucks. So I guess I refound my maturity in understanding that every type of music has something beautiful you can take from and learn from. With rock, it would be the attitude, the vibe. In pop music, it would be production and songwriting and how to write amazing stuff with less tools. Funk music is all about the trance and the groove and the pocket. Jazz music is, of course, interaction and harmony. And so then I kind of got open up and basically got back to my roots, if you will. And since then, that was probably like, 10, 12 years ago, I really realized I just love so many different things, and I'm not gonna block myself from enjoying all of them. So I just started exploring, and then came what you said. Life happens. I get hired for different projects, working with different artists, touring with different people, and that's where I really start actually realizing all of that study into practice, and starting actually work with proper pop artists, proper jazz projects. Later on, more Middle Eastern, North African projects, and getting into microtonal music. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's cool. So basically you're saying like that hunger was a natural inclination that you always had, and then later on that just became like your professional path.
Exactly.
The career path.
Exactly.
And would you what is the thing that you would recommend actually for someone, let's say, getting right now out of the conservatory? It's a jungle out there, and it's really tough. I mean, we got out of it like 10 years ago, but of course, the industry really changed right now with streaming. The industry changed with how fast things are made right now, the amount that is being made, how much is being uploaded per day, how much music is available right now. What would your advice be?
It's a tough question. I think everyone has to find their own path. I'm not a big believer in one fits all in anything in life, and let alone in the music industry. I think you have to be very open, to stay very open. That's a huge factor. Be open. First of all, be a yes man, especially in the beginning of your career. That's actually a tip I got from Ittai Weissman on my first weeks in school. It's like, man, be a yes man. What does that mean? Say yes, man. You get offered. Maybe it pays less this time, but they see you doing a good work. Just show yourself. Show that you're positive, that you want to work, that you want to put effort, that you want to contribute, and stay open, like for if it's different musics, if it's different paths, if it's different opportunities. And I know it's a cliche, and by now hopefully many people know that, but I would definitely stress to any beginning musician you have to understand that being a good musician is only a small part of things, is the default that they expect you to.
Right.
But man, being reliable, responsible is a huge factor. So when it comes to, if you start in projects, be on time for rehearsal, be prepared. You don't want to be the one guy of like, oh, I didn't check that chart. Oh man, I forgot to upload this one. Anyone can send me this chart. Be there, be ready, be quiet, do your job well, smile, be nice to hang around, especially if you're going to start touring with bands. Man, I've been touring for 3 years now, nonstop almost, a world tour. If you're not nice to hang around and to just vibe with, man, it's going to be very hard to keep your jobs, I think. So a big part of being a touring musician, man, just be nice. Just be respectful for other people's space. Be, funny when it needs to be funny, serious when it needs to be, just like a decent human being. I think that's a huge part. And yeah, stay open as much as possible.
Yeah. So now we get to a point like that. I have like some fixed questions that I always ask, which I find really important, because it's kind of like the reason for this podcast is to actually see how the sausage is made. Like a lot of times we just have our perception of musicians, especially maybe it changed a little bit with social media, but the fact is that we are behind our instruments, and we don't. Let's say musicians don't engage that much in podcasting, or they don't engage that much like actually with talking about their experiences, and some of those experiences can be also really bad, you know. So I wanted to ask you, what was one of the worst experiences you had on stage?
Oof, there are plenty.
Just I have to interject just for you to understand. there are some experiences out there that really made us almost quit, all of us. Just like, I'm not doing this anymore. This is done.
Oh, man.
And if you can come back after this and continue doing it, it means that music chose you and you didn't actually choose music. It's like you have to continue doing it. But yeah.
So immediately few comes to mind, including some that maybe didn't want to make me quit music in general, but definitely this particular project, But I want to mention another one because it's a little funny. And, a lot of these stories end up being funny later on, but in real time, it's like traumatic. So I'm still actually now there's a revival of this project, Wicked Jazz Sounds. That's a household name in Amsterdam. Production, DJs and musicians pool, playing parties, a regular night in Amsterdam. I joined that team in like 2013 or something. Played with them for many, many years. At some point, they also kind of pushed own the Wicked Jazz Sound band. So not just the party nights, but an actual band with own record, like own music. Right. And we started touring a little bit. And that season, we did a bunch of festivals. And one of those were the Zwarte Cross. That's a huge festival in east of the Netherlands. Massive, massive festival. It was probably our biggest stage to date then. And I remember the night before, we had another gig in Frankfurt. And the idea was we go with a van, the whole band doing the Frankfurt gig, sleeping there, and drive back the next day and, drive to, what is it, Overijssel, I guess?
Overijssel, yeah.
I think so. I think it's in, is it Gelderland? I think Overijssel. So drive through east of the Netherlands. The night before gig was actually amazing. Amazing gig in Frankfurt. 4 sets of just pure fun. I have a million stories from just that one gig alone. We end up sleeping, or I should say not really sleeping much. That's a whole other story. I slept half an hour that night. My mistake. Lobby call like 7 a.m. Okay?
Because of partying?
Yeah. But so I 7 in the morning, lobby call. We all go. And I remember we had a tour manager, and I guess he wasn't really tight on schedule times. So we just stopped for like a breakfast in Frankfurt, and we really were chilling. And then, okay, now it's really time to go. We start driving like a 6-hour drive. During this drive, he realizes, oh shit, we still have to pick up the trumpet player from this other place, a little detour for there. We start calculating. It was the early days of Waze. We starting seeing and we see, the show time was, let's say whatever, like 1:30. Arrival time 1:44. Not even line check. We're talking like 14 minutes after this big ass festival stage starts. We panicking. We start driving like maniacs. The driver and we all have to pee. We don't have time for like a pee stop. So first of all, the drive was just insane. Like 6 hours of sheer stress. We're all sweating bullets. We all have to pee. We finally, and we see the closer we get, the arrival time, traffic builds up. It's like now it's 17 minutes now, and the whole set is like 45 minutes, right?
Oh, fuck.
Finally, we make it to the terrain. It's a terrain with like 10 stages. We enter there 10 minutes late. We're like, where is this in this stage? The organizer there doesn't know. He's like, oh, I don't know. Go in the map. Look. And we start in almost crying. We driving. We're a big team, all scared shitless. Driving through this massive festival, finally to reach the stage. Everybody's like, where have you been? All the audience is staying there ready to listen. We're just there, haven't even plugged in yet. Needless to say, no sound check time, line check, just all.
Oh my God.
And I'm running, and I'm like going to the stagehand, like, where's the guitar amp? And he's like, you didn't bring it with yourself? And I'm like, you're not serious. Yeah, we wrote it in the rider. I'm like, no guitar amp. And so someone's like, oh, we're going to run and bring it from another band on another stage. So another stagehand runs to ask another guitar player if he'll be kind enough to lend me the amp. By the time we actually could start playing the first song was probably 30 minutes in. We played 3 songs and called off stage. The audience didn't find it amusing at all. We were on the verge of crying on stage. The tour manager felt extremely guilty, and I love him very much. Man, it was really, really bad. I remember like 3rd song in, and they tell us last song, and we were like, we had these 10 songs to present from the album we just like released. It was really sad. We worked a lot towards that moment. So
I mean, I'm just having I'm having a small panic attack just from the story.
And that was told short, man. 6 hours of sheer stress on the bus, man. Seeing the ETA getting further and further. Oh my God. So yeah, that's one story that immediately comes to mind.
Well, here you go. even when you plan well.
Yeah. God, only if we had like one less pancake, on that like breakfast, But hey, anyone desserts? We got time. We good.
Exactly, we're good. We're good.
Oh my God.
And okay, so now to counter that, what was the best experience?
Ooh, wow. This is even harder. Man, from thousands of shows I reckon I've done. Man, it's really hard to pick some. I would say it probably gonna be a Karsu gig. And there's so many to choose from. So, okay, one of them would have been actually a really nice arena show in the Istanbul arena. It was just a night that I will never forget. But actually, I want to mention a way smaller show because we did, huge shows with her, and that's a lot of fun too. But it's not necessarily always the most fun. Actually, the most memorable one would be either a small club we did in New York in our US tour. We did a double night in that one place called Drome. And the second night there was one of the best shows I've ever had. But I will actually mention a show that became a legend in our own band. It's in a very unknown city called Kocaeli in Turkey. And not too far off from Istanbul, a few hours away. That was like a smaller club tour, I guess like 10 dates, 10 cities or something. One of many we did in Turkey the past 3 years. And that particular show, the vibe was just electricity. I can't even describe it. Like you had this stage where you have some sort of a cage going from the backstage. You have some sort of a cage heeling over the audience. And just by the time we even walked towards the stage, the audience went so nuts. It was probably the loudest like cheering I've ever heard. In fact, so much that the drummer that was like peeing last moment thought we were already on stage and panicked and just ran with the zipper open to make it on time. And he was like, oh, we not even make it. Just when they saw us walking to the stage, people lost their mind. And we know that's going to be a fun night.
Like the pop was just
Man,
insane.
First note, that feeling when, of course, performing people and audience is such a give and take relationship, right? We all build on each other. We give and take from each other. It's such a mutual, right? Kind of like love affair for a night. And there it was like the best lover you can have. It's like, oh my God, you're gonna make it so fun for us, and we're gonna do it back to you. And we played probably some of the most tightest shows we've ever played. It was almost 10 out of 10 when it comes to just playing, vibe, audience. It was so much fun. And when we finished the show, there was an after party in the venue on where the audience stand. And there was a DJ called DJ Ali. He started playing all these Turkish 90s hits, and we got to know many of these huge hits. That night later became literally legend in our band. We keep like quoting these songs, dancing to these songs. We still have videos from us dancing in that party with these songs for the first time. We ended up some of these songs incorporating into our set.
For real? Wow.
In fact, we see it as the Mecca of our band, this show. So Kocaeli for us stands for like the Mecca of the Karsu team. Like every time we want to say something is exceptionally good, we call it Kocaeli. That's how good it was.
Cool.
Yeah. That was just a night I will never forget.
Wow, awesome.
Luckily, one of many with her. I must say, shows with Karsu tend to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, because she's you're still touring with her until when is it? Do you know? Like you have now a world tour, right? Happening?
No, so we finished. Basically, we were touring nonstop for 2.5 years, more or less. Different legs, but they were so close to each other. You can kind of almost see it as one big tour for 2.5 years. I think roughly 250 shows or something like that all over the world. This year, she took a semi-sabbatical. First of all, she needed a little rest because it's been really intense. She's a bit of a Renaissance woman. So she has TV shows and she has, magazines she does and a cooking book and like her own cooking show. And she was busy with so many things. And also there was a huge earthquake the year prior to that in Turkey.
Right.
She lost a lot of family members. It was really difficult times. And so she really needed first a break. Then she is about to get married this month.
Okay.
And after that, she reserved the rest of this half a year to work on the following album because we haven't been releasing an album for more than 4 years. We were just too busy touring. We released some singles.
Yeah.
At some point, enough is enough.
Yeah.
She had to put a stand, said no to all the bookers, basically informed them to just keep saying no to gigs now and just gonna work on the next album. So we're gonna do 4 really, really nice and big shows coming July. One is gonna be the main stage, North Sea Jazz Festival. On the
Nice.
Sunday, the Mass stage. 2 days prior to that, we're gonna do something called Royal Park Live. That's a big park castle kind of like show in Zustag, I believe. Right after that, we go into Istanbul and we play first Harbiye, which is the most famous venue of Turkey. That's like a big amphitheater in Istanbul. And after that, a massive kind of like city big festival show in Ankara. So we're gonna do these 4 shows in July, and that's it officially for this year, because she reserved the rest of the year just for working and writing the next album. And I'm really okay with also using this time for a lot of other stuff, and I'm practicing so much now and writing and stuff. So yeah,
That's actually what I wanted to get to. Like, I mean, we're sitting, it's the first time we're sitting like in front of a camera, like a couple of microphones actually, but we know each other for so long, and we've been having, I think, thousands of hours of just sending like small bits of like, hey, I was thinking about this, I was thinking about that. It's the first time that we're like making it official now.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we talked about, I remember, like, which I found a really important subject, is that you can find yourself in a routine of touring, and then it's kind of like maintenance. But then because of that, let's say, break from the world tour, from international touring, you found yourself practicing again. You found again the love for it. And
quite ironic.
Exactly. And what I'm interested to know is that, was there a time during these international tours where you felt like, hey, I'm not, I need to get into the instrument again. This is like almost
all the time.
Almost like imposter syndrome, So yeah,
all the time. I don't know if I had as heavy as imposter syndrome level, but certainly, man, people have to understand, when you're touring intensively, especially when the tours become big, the teams are big, the venues are big. We're talking work around the clock. You can have a super late night. 7 a.m. is the lobby call. Sometimes every day a flight. Every day a 8-hour drive with the van. The US tour was like 4 nights in a row, flight, sound check, and the show, same day of the flight, each executive day. You get to a point that when you have a day off, you kind of want to see the city you're in, you want to hang with the crew. The last thing you want to do is go to your hotel room and practice guitar. So you get to this routine in which you only really have establish a relationship with the instrument for the few minutes. On the sound checks by themselves turn more and more functional and very efficient after a while, especially with our amazing sound guys and so the monitor engineer. So like at some point it's almost like a line check. 1 song, 1.5, if we want to check something quickly, and done. And then dinner. Next time you feel the guitar is on stage playing that same show, you can play at 3 a.m. with your left hand woken up. You know what I mean? So that's maintenance. And the next time you're going to see your instrument is the next sound check for, again, just a couple of minutes. Then the problem is that you will have a week off from tour, and you'll have all these excuses for yourself of like, but now I've been busy with just music 3 months, so now I can allow myself to not do music this week. I told you I'm a nerd of many things. Now I just want to, whatever, go on Wikipedia for a whole night, or like, watch a series, binge the shit out of it, or just hang with friends, getting high, whatever, you just want to like chill,
all
chill out.
Legal substances.
All legal.
All of it legal. Yeah.
Yeah. And, that's where it started bothering me. And I think it started eating me more and more. And it was a gradual thing where I felt it a little bit, but I kind of suppressed it. Oh man, I'm not feeling in shape. Like I really remember specific sound checks when I'm like, man, I'm just not in shape. Not just technically, but here, improvisation, like openness to like ideas and melodies. And I was just like, man, I need it bad. And I think the reason why I could easily suppress it was because it was so much fun, the tour. So it was always an excuse to like, don't worry, I loving what I do. And I still do. I love touring, man. Don't get me wrong. I love it. It was a dream come true for me, this world tour, But so I would do it any day. But I did feel like it's starting to bother me more and more. And I kind of decided to make a New Year resolution in which I was like, I want to incorporate like daily practice on the instrument every day again. I really miss it. And then when Karsu informed us that 2024 is going to be a little bit of touring in the beginning and then pretty much a free year for all that I mentioned before, I was like, perfect timing. 1st of January, that's where I'm doing it. And I went through it. And from 1st of January, I was like, man, I'm going to practice every day more than ever suddenly, like getting super nerdy about, some advanced concept that nobody cares about, just from my own sheer, happiness.
I mean, nerds are listening to this podcast. So,
all right. So you love it, Coltrane changes, practicing countdown, like a lot of superimposition, harmony, advanced harmony, esoteric chord voicings nobody uses, just because I wanted to grow. And that feeling of growing is probably the best feeling a musician or an artist in general, I think, could have. It's not so much about what you achieve, is that process, that feeling that you grow up every day, that you're learning something new, that you're developing. I love that, and I miss it so much. So suddenly, instead of being fearful for the fact that my agenda is not as full as it was the last years, I was like, wow, that's actually really cool. Like, I'm really enjoying that, just re-establishing my love for my instrument, and
will you incorporate that now when you have this? It's not new knowledge, it's just like something that you revisited, right? Or that you re-manifested, the thing of practicing and having like the routine. Because, I mean, if you want to get, that's a thing that people have to understand. You can't be good on your instrument without practicing. This is something that, like, it sounds so trivial for us saying it, but it's like this coined word of talented is absolutely useless.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely.
I mean, talent can take you to a certain level, but you will hit a glass ceiling at some point. You just can't without this. There's so much mechanical practice that is needed, but also
there's a sentence that I thought about like a few years ago, which means talent can open some doors, focus and repetition teaches you how to craft the key.
Here you go.
So that's the difference here. Like, there are some people that they have amazing ears just from birth, and they're going to rely on their ears but when it comes to, let's say, theoretical knowledge, when it comes to facility on the instrument, when it comes to repertoire knowledge, when it comes to technical knowledge of, let's say, arranging or composing or all that stuff, these are things that are being earned by just studying.
Right.
You can't, it's not like a predisposed, like, look, my hands are perfect for piano. It doesn't mean anything if I don't practice.
Exactly.
It means absolutely nothing.
And it's also a little bit like a language. I mean, you could have incredible talent for languages, for linguistics. You want to learn Mandarin, Chinese, you move to China. If you just count on your talent, I mean, you're going to hit a certain level, but you will, if you don't practice Chinese with yourself and then with others and speak it on a daily basis, you will never be fluent.
Exactly.
It's just as simple as that. And I think every craft is the same in that, and it doesn't matter if it's an intellectual craft, if you're a philosopher, or if it's a physical craft, if you're a craftsman, builder, or musician, which is a little bit of both. A little bit of mechanical, a little bit of intellectual, and talent for either will only get you to a certain point.
For sure. And so the reason that I was asking about actually is like, will you incorporate this now, having all of this? Like, will you be more, let's say, stubborn about it?
I really hope so. I do notice that it's a lot about ups and downs. It also correlates to your general well-being at a certain period. It's kind of easy. It's easier to let go of it for a couple of days than to go back to it. It's a little bit like gym, right? The first day going back to gym is hard. The second day a little less hard. Third is kind of like, it's a habit already. Autopilot. So I noticed that for me works in these 3-day, kind of chunks where if I haven't done it well this week, now the first day is again gonna be hard. The second a little easier. Third is like, of course, that's just why I use a guitar,
Yeah.
I really hope so. I think it's a daily work. It's a daily challenge with yourself mentally to get yourself to work hard. I truly want to hope and believe that I can keep doing it for the rest of my life, because that makes me happy. And I'm sure it will never be easy. It will always, to the rest of my days, be like a daily struggle of like, You got to do it. But then once you do it, you really rip the benefits and the sheer just happiness and pleasure you got just from the process of it. So it's a bit like gym. Every time is annoying to do, but the moment you get out of the session with this endorphin pumping and you're like, man, that's great. I loved it. I went, you know? So it's a little bit like that.
That's another thing that I'm discovering. I mean, we're like mid-30s, and this is something that kind of like in my early 20s, I started to understand this concept of consistency, of no matter what, if you're consistent, also in the face of difficulties, in the face of challenges, negative challenges, in the face of distractions, if you remain consistent, eventually that goal will be achieved. But at the same time, you understand, oh, it's not about the goal. It's about actually, you know, that cliche. It's not about the destination. It's about the journey.
100%.
And it's really correlating with our life as professional instrumentalists. I mean, it's a perishable skill. That's a thing. If you're not going to practice for a year now, you won't forget what you're doing, but it's going to take you a few days to really like...
A bit like gym, right? There's a certain like base level that you develop, and like to reach it back takes extra time. You lose it quick, you gain it quick.
Exactly. That was, I have to say, like, I mean, this is, I'm not here to talk about myself here, but it's like, I see the correlation in the sense of why I left the orchestra, and I remember saying it actually to Maripepa. I will get to it like in a different episode, but like the orchestra and all that stuff, but because I didn't practice. I was just busy, like just managing and busy.
Writing,
arranging this, and I was like, man, I didn't touch the piano for a week, you know, and I felt like I'm not doing justice to the music, you know. And then now after I quit and I'm just doing what I want and like I'm back to practicing, it's a complete game changer for me of like, wow, actually I was a very good pianist.
Man, feeling in shape is the best, man. You know, it's the opposite of that feeling I had on stage on soundcheck that day. You know, it's funny because when the first really big boost of practice I had the beginning of the year, I immediately started booking. I was like, okay, now I have more free time. Let's book like some local jazz gigs. I haven't done them in years, you know, because let's be honest, when you're touring hardcore with a pop artist, on your few nights off a year, why would you do like a, you know, like a 5-set night for like a, you know, maybe supermarket money? I mean, I love doing it for my soul, but at those nights, I prioritized rest and, you know, seeing people I love.
You pay a price for this, especially in our age.
But like, now I could do it, right? So I booked, you know, a show I remember with some of my favorite musicians around. Like we used to play a lot in alto back in the days. But Yoran Fromm on drums, Ittai Weissman on saxophone, and Omer Govrin on bass. So I just booked them for this local, like, small jazz gig, Pomp Station, in east of Amsterdam. And man, that was like that month that I really got into jazz again, like practicing. And it felt so nice. Honestly, we played for probably like 30 people. One of the nicest gigs I've had in a long time. It was so much fun to play, and we all felt it. Somehow, everybody were like in a practicing period. Omer also was like, man, I'm really grinding now. And Ittai is always amazing, and Yoran, you know, is just like really incredible musicians. And it was, you know, these moments, especially in a jazz gig, I feel like jazz music, because it's so interactive and improvised, you have such a big range of quality that with the same bed could be from one night to another. Like sometimes it clicks and it's just happening. We all know that slang is just happening or it's not, right? And that was one of those uber happening nights, you know, and it was just everything was, you know, working out. Like
nice.
The pocket, just the ideas flew, and we were all smiling to each other the whole time. And I finished that gig and I was like, it's so much fun being in shape, man.
Yes.
Damn, that feeling of like, woo, you see the guitar, you know, on my couch at home. Before you almost develop a fear during tour, like, oh, it's just a prop there. I'm not gonna grab it now in my free time. And now it's kind of like this.
Let me scroll Instagram.
Ooh. Yeah, exactly. And now it's like, oh, that looks sexy. Oh yeah, like you pick up the guitar. Yes, I feel it. You know, yesterday I did 6 hours. Now I'm already first minute. I'm already hot. You know, because I'm like just used to it. So it's, man, I agree with everything you said. It's man, practicing is really the shit, especially when you start to find your ways to enjoy it.
Exactly, because I had some moments I remember that people came to me for, which I don't know if it happened to you. People came for a lesson and they said like, I saw you playing and I want to play like you. And I was like, all right, do you have 10 years now?
Or 20, yeah.
Or like, do you have, what are you willing to actually stop doing in order to achieve this? It's not necessarily like, this is something that I talk with a lot of students or like friends, colleagues, peers. It's like the sacrifice is integral to actually wanting to achieve that level. It's impossible, because when I say like you have to stop doing certain things, is really coming in conjunction of the fact that people want this to become just another thing that they do, when actually you have to stop doing certain things in order to do this, meaning like that comes now the consistency part of
Right.
it. You know, like if you go to the gym every day, 2 hours a day, 7 days a week, that's 14 hours of doing only that. And we've been practicing. I had periods I would practice 7, 8, 9 hours a day. You know, and
extreme.
It's like, extreme.
Wouldn't per se recommend it. But,
no, but
you
but
know,
I feel like all of us are going through, like, there's
Right,
a
there's
period.
periods, yes.
It's period, like, I mean, it's mainly conservatory, mainly bubble period, mainly like cult,
all
jazz.
day long is around
Cult, you know, and you sound like a practice room at the end. You don't sound better.
because you don't have life experiences to reflect in your
Exactly.
music is either, right? It's like you sound like a practice room because practice room is all your reality.
Practice room, exactly. Like because music revolves around your life experiences. Your life experiences are
Right.
doing scales and practicing theory and all that stuff, and then you end up going to a rehearsal, and it's like everything is super clean and super clear, but really boring.
Right, and the other way would be, the other extreme would be, if your only life experience is like touring and having fun in like Turkey, then you're gonna sound like Lahmacun, maybe, you know, like you know, I mean, like I guess we all in the search of the balance in everything in life, and also in music and practicing, and I guess that is also fluctuating, and you always kind of like correct course, right? So like, and it's okay. I love that it's dynamic. And like you say, we find ourselves in a period where, wow, this week I played 6 hours every day. This one just one, but hey, every day, that's great. You know, I remember a interview with Clifford Brown, who's one of my really all-time favorite musicians, incredible trumpetist, you know, shouldn't say much, I guess. Hopefully everybody knows the name.
Died very young.
Died extremely young. One of the only clean guys in the scene, didn't take any drugs. Extremely sweet, seemingly sweet person. I saw the only like 2 or 3 interviews you can find of him online. And in one of them, he's asked how he's practicing. And especially the interviewer says, you know, now you're playing every night of the week. You know, back in the days, those jazz bands played every night, 7 days a week. So every night you have 2 hours to 3 hours of music on stage. Do you still feel the need to practice? And he said, I have to practice. Regardless of my night, I have to practice by myself at least, you know, that my half an hour, and I can proudly say that I've never missed a day in my life. Now, I don't do it long. It's like I can do 30 minutes, 60 minutes, hour and a half, but every single day of my life. And I love that. And actually nowadays when I talk to my students, I always tell them that for me, consistency or frequency is more important than quantity. In other words, if you practice 2 hours every 2 days or 1 hour each day, it's better 1 hour each day. But I would even go further and say that even if you practice 4 hours every 2 days and 1 hour every day, probably I'll still opt for the one every day, because there's something about conditioning of the brain, a little bit like when you train a pet, really. The repetition, the fact that the dog every time hears a certain sound, when you know you train him to do a certain thing, the same exact happen with muscle memory, with you know your how your brain develops and conditions. So I'm a big advocate for just do it daily. Don't stress yourself if you don't have a lot of time. You know, people are like, man, I can't find 5 hours. No, like no, 30 minutes, but do it every day. You're gonna get so far. Just that consistency, that your brain develops this habit of, oh, now comes that part of the day where I trained that, you know, and it's like it remembers it.
Wow. Okay, that's cool. You know, I was just thinking to myself, if Clifford Brown practiced the same day that he had the car accident.
Oh my God, man.
And if you know, because then it breaks the streak.
Yeah, man, I saw an interview with Sonny Rollins talking about, because he was in the band waiting for him to come from New York. Yeah, and they were good friends. And I don't know, that moment really broke my heart. Like it is such a sweet man, actually, in general. You know, Sonny Rollins, and the way he spoke about it was very emotional. Like you know, He was such a promising talent. He was such a good kid. Everybody loved him. He's like everybody loved Clifford. You know, he was such a nicest guy in the scene. And then we heard that terrible news, you know, in that stormy night. Him and Richie Powell, who was driving,
wow,
you know, the pianist from the same band, and his wife. And man, it was. I almost kind of felt myself there. You know, you waiting for Clifford to arrive to the gig. What was it, Philadelphia? Or I'm not sure. And man, yeah, it was. Yeah, it's pretty sad. For me, it's definitely one of my biggest influences.
And what would be your advice to yourself with all the knowledge that you have right now to the Ishai from 10 years ago, to the Jessy from 10 years ago?
That's a great question. I'd probably say enjoy the process. I think we live in a world that is very goal-oriented. And like if we look at like the classic American dream of, you know, you go to this school so you can go into this college, so you can go into this grad school, so you can go into this job, so you can get the promotion here. And you keep doing that, and eventually you're the CEO and you're 55 and you're looking back at your office, sitting in your office, and you're like, where did my life go? You know, because you were constantly chasing. And I felt it certainly while trying to achieve my dreams, like I have to play that venue, man, I have to do a stadium gig, I have to do this festival, I have to play Lowlands, you know, I need to earn this, or I need to do that, or play with this artist, or, you know, be able to do this. And I noticed that it's, I don't want to get too philosophical or deep per se, but those end up being very, in a way, strangely enough, very materialistic realizations. So you end up always, by their nature, you end up immediately always looking at the furthest one. In fact, right at the start. So if it would be my goal to, like, I want to play that venue, and then I find myself on that venue, and the first 5 minutes in that show, you're already thinking, but tomorrow we're doing this venue. Oh my God. But not, because it's like, been there, done that, you know. And I noticed that if I live my life goal-oriented in every aspect of life, by the way, and I'm not this huge hippie or anything, but yes, I do believe that a little bit of, how do you call it? You know, the being in the, there's a word for this whole field, like mindfulness, I guess.
Yeah.
I do try to put a lot of effort nowadays in that, in be able to be present a little bit, in to be able to appreciate beauty around me. If it's a beautiful structure I really love, you know, a building that's beautiful, to really try to imagine for a second all those years that the workers would come every day and build this thing and really appreciate that beautiful thing they made. If it's a beautiful dish at a restaurant, thinking of all the effort now the chef is sweating into it, and now, like, you know, enjoy every bite, be appreciative of it. And let alone with music, I really feel like it's all about the process and not the goals. So back to our talk about practice. Now it's not like I'm practicing countdown because in a month I have a gig and I want to be able to play 350 BPM. No, the process of challenging myself with countdown every day, and the seeing myself progressing every few days, that gives me real happiness, real actual deep happiness that sticks. And so for me, I it's, again, easier said than done. It's a daily work, mental work, to be able to really appreciate the process of anything. So if I go back, I'll save myself 10 years of being so goal-oriented, which I guess has advantages because it pushes you to be hungry, to achieve, and put yourself in places, and, you know, get yourself opportunities. But man, if I could relive it, and I mean, I loved my last 10 years, but if I would really just be able to do it again and be a bit more in the now, like kind of, you know, just, hey, you're in this venue now, don't think of anything else tonight. Enjoy all the hard work you did to get to this moment. Just be here, let it soak in, you know, just, man, look at your fellow band members, smile to them, share that beautiful moment you will always remember. And yeah, I would say that.
Awesome. Man, it was great having you.
Oh, yeah.
It was an awesome conversation.
Already passed, huh?
It's, I mean,
damn,
how long have we
quick.
been talking? I don't know.
They always say that, you know, but how long has it been?
We've been talking for almost an hour.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
It went like this.
It went
incredible.
like this. Yeah, I mean, because that's what I love about this format so much, podcasting in general, not this particular format, is that we're just having a conversation. And it's like, we've been having these conversations,
right? Only now
for
there's
like
cameras, but
20
you know,
years, you know? So similar to what actually Joran said, like last podcast, it's like, yeah, we're just with microphones and cameras now. And actually, kind of pushes us to be a little bit more like, thoughtful and mindful actually about what we're saying, and it puts us in this like more alert state. Tightness, exactly, a little bit more tight.
I love that. It's like how do they call it in the comedy scene? Like words. When you need to really carefully like edit your economy, like
trim the fat,
right? Exactly. So like words economy, I guess, or something.
Yeah, words economy. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we are a we're avid fans of comedy, and that's a funny thing because I discovered it only last year with you.
That we both like this one podcast.
Kill Tony.
And,
It's like
for the ones who know,
it's not niche actually anymore. It's not.
I guess it became more famous over the last few weeks.
It's really not niche, man. It's millions of people.
Now Tony has done this huge Netflix production, the Tom Brady roast, and I think now he gained a big chunk of new fans. Yeah. But I've been following this thing for like a good several years.
Yeah, me too. And I remember like, in the beginning, I was like, "Oh, this is so cruel and and horrible," and like people
but
are
refreshing,
because we're so used to seeing stand up is like tailored, like specials and all that, and then when you see someone bombing, it's like, woo! Oh my god, this is just
someone killing on the spot,
exactly,
like man,
murdering, like destroying.
Same with
the place.
music, right? It's very similar to jazz music in the sense that. Maybe in pop music a little bit less because you do play a part mostly. Mm. And at a certain level of technique, I would say you can kind of produce that part pretty well also on your worst nights. But in improvised music, you really see it how like a great musician can kind of like bomb. I guess the more experience you get, your like worst level of a night kind of goes up as well. So you have a certain minimum that you won't kind of go beneath, but still within the range, the brackets of your level, you can kind of bomb, kind of kill.
Think like open mics are jam sessions. Yeah. If you think about it, I mean, it's like I never did open mics. I love stand up. I love telling jokes and all that. But it's like I see so many correlations, so many like parallels between comedy and jazz, exactly what you said, because if people come and they have to just like kill it in 2 minutes or 1 minute, you got to have good material. And there you see who has experience or natural talent, because it's language and words. It's different than playing an instrument you have to be proficient
and
on.
It's also like phrasing, because you can say the same thing with so much fat trimmed
cadences.
And you really notice it with less mature musicians. What I notice especially, and I've had a big case of that disease as well growing up, is the overplaying aspect.
Right.
And I think, and we still learn to get better at this every day. This is something I always hopefully will get better at. Say more with less. And so you notice it on like the young, eager musician coming from like a conservatorium audition, right? You'll see that this guy has great ideas, but just too much. It's just like, so much. And then it works less, and then comes this other mature 18-year-old, and he starts playing a blues pudding. Yep. And and what would be perceived as like less impressive is immediately way more impressive for the teachers, right? It's like, wow, this guy's mature, man. He really stands behind every note. Like he uses rest. Same with comics, right?
It's the same. I mean, you see it with cadences of delivering a joke and actually knowing, because that's the thing. It's like it's so much dependent on the situation also. Like you get up on stage, you can play something, but let's say the sound is terrible, you don't hear anything, and you're like, you don't know where your point of focus is. After a few years or decades that thing happens, you know where to put your focus, and it's going to sound good no matter what,
right?
So it's like you can navigate also bad situations or great situations where it's like overwhelming the crowd, 2,500 people, and you're like, you're focused. No matter what, you're going to deliver the same kind of quality, no matter like the exterior, the circumstances that are outside of you.
Where practice comes again into play, because you prepare yourself in the practice room exactly for that situation, in which when you're on a stage, even if it's 40,000 screaming people, you're still really solid, because you're adapted. You condition your body to, under any kind of condition, to be able to deliver a certain thing.
Exactly.
And that's why we practice every day, to get it. So whatever happens. And like I said before, there's a bracket of level to any musician. There's some that are considered like more solid, I call them, like that their worst day is still super, in. But still, even those people, you can still really notice, like, wow, he had an amazing night. He had not such a great night. And again, if you take like really famous, people we all love and admire, it's like their worst night is probably better than most people's best night. And still, yet see those nights that it's just sparkles. It's like, wow, he is in tonight, and you see it with comedians as well. You can see them kill 4 nights a row. 5th night is like, he's not really feeling it tonight, right?
It's interesting you said that because I went to see Ari Shafir at the Meervaart here, and he was
performing.
He was
here?
performing in the Meervaart from all places.
Damn.
Yeah, and it was pretty full. But like it's a room of like 1,200 people, and I think something like 900 or 1,000 people came, and he was checking out new material. So he was like trying out, and that's the thing. I think that's kind of like the, let's say, I don't want to say the negative part of podcasting and all the specials and everything, is that people are seeing all these like short reels and like everything is like super like punchy and all that. And the specials, which is like, it's work of 5 years that is put into 60 minutes.
And practiced.
Man,
again and again and again and again.
So I saw one of his practice sessions,
Yeah.
So that's
where you
the
let
thing.
yourself kind of go a little bit.
He's checking material. He's like interacting with the crowd. Some stuff bombed.
It's like us doing very like low-key jazz venue where, there's very little people. And it's like, oh, that's the good night to try out some wacky shit.
Actually, I have to say, like, I'm going to have, that's a thing that I took from comedy. I'm going to have a residency in the Lamar Cafe that is starting from September. It's going to be for a year. Like every month I'm playing with different musicians that I really like. You'll come for sure.
Cool.
Like I really want us to do it.
I heard of this new venue actually.
Yeah,
I
exactly. So we're going to kind
of
of take more over and with also like proper marketing, proper programming, like really, really nice, like top tier musicians, good payment, all that stuff. We're really working on that now to create, to make it real. And I'm doing it every month and I'm going to try out material.
Nice.
And like that's the idea of it. Like I have, for instance, I'm doing a solo piano recording for Treptic, and I'm going to play all the material. Like I'm doing it in December this year, and I'm going to play all the material in January. That's the plan, like to play in the cafe. And it's really cool because I can really try just stuff, and it's really informal, but at the same time, maybe this will go into an album, maybe this will go into like a tour, maybe this will go into like big like productions and all that stuff. And that's something that I actually took directly from comedy.
Nice.
Directly, like that format of just trying new stuff, and people come and they see it. Some stuff works, some stuff doesn't.
It's very cool that you have a platform to do it. And what's cool now that I'm thinking about it, even in really big pop, big produced tours for big audiences and a lot of budget and big teams, I do notice that it's still like even when you come with like a very tight show for first date because you've been practicing a lot, still you will never know how it works until you kind of hit the stage. And I noticed that at least for us with the Karsu band, for example, we do so much arranging or rearranging during our long drives together.
Right.
And we learn from the first night that this one, maybe we turn the set list a little bit. Maybe we take this song and maybe let's work on a new intro for this one. And so for an audience, I would recommend try to hit a band like mid-tour. And you might have the other problem, which is like we're just material tired a little bit. You know what I mean? Just physically, everybody's a little bit on the end of their battery.
Yeah.
First night could be amazing just for the sheer excitement and everything is new and fresh. But I think they would be the tightest around the middle where it's like you're still fresh, but now we really figured out the trimming. Like now we know exactly what works perfectly. Now the show is going to be just tight,
That's why I love touring.
Yeah.
I love this. I love the fact of like taking material and running with it 10, 15, 20 times because we are not robots. We're going to tweak it and change it and 100%. Change the order and this and that. And then what is like, of course, for the audience, they don't know it. Like they come to a show, unless you are really following the band from gig to gig to gig and you see the changes, which most audio members, they are not really cognizant of that.
Right.
Their line of focus is different. But I really love it because it creates a community within the musicians, in the sense of like, wow, something changed. We created something.
And you sound so much better. I mean, it's like look at all the bands we all love from back in the day. Man, the tightest ones, the most pocket bands are the ones played every night together. I mean, a band will never sound good. I can stand behind that statement I'm going to say now. You can have the best musicians in the scene. Super group, best of the best. If the band doesn't tour, I mean, they still sound amazing because, that's what they are. But they could sound so much better if they tour, because it's like your togetherness.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how good you are. Your togetherness is built over time. It's like every relationship between humans. When we're musicians on stage, we're not just playing music together. We form a relationship.
Right, exactly.
There's love and friendship and some anger sometimes.
Trust.
Yes, some frustrations and some little conflicts, and getting over these conflicts and, coming through. And indeed what you said prior, which I really believe in, which is like, standing, through like adversities, right?
Yeah.
And challenges. And once you be able to overcome a certain adversity, you really grow from it. And as a band, as a collective of any group of friends, we all know that good friends we went for like a little trip abroad with, and after 5 days we can't stand each other.
Yeah.
Imagine now like a team of 20 people for like a whole year.
Yeah, man.
So, man, you have to grow together and really have days, man, now these two people are not talking the whole day. Hey, awkward, But now, tomorrow, they figured out how to do it. And now they're going to hug on stage, and they're going to make it. And then they're way further with each other's relationship after they went through this, challenge. And as a whole, I believe that we're, like you said, we're all humans. We're not just musicians. And that's a huge part of who we are as a band as well. Our humanity together. And I think that it's such a, first of all, sheer pleasure to travel with people and see how we grow together, and great for the memories, and that's what we live for, really. But just sheer music and tightness, man, bands like that played if you look at the James Brown band, either the first or second generation, when they had those like 350 dates a year period.
Jesus, wow.
Every day, you know.
2 weeks off.
Man, sometimes Apollo Theater, I don't remember if I might quote it wrong, but I believe it was either 4 or 6 sets same night, where the whole audience sends off the end of the show, new tickets coming in, the hall gets filled again, the band has to come again and play the full show 4 times in a row. Man, when you listen to bootlegs of that band on the road, man, it doesn't get tighter. No. It doesn't, because they are together. If you look at the Count Basie band, the big
great
band
example.
playing for 40 years.
Yeah, great example.
Can anyone come with like a tighter big band in history? I mean, it's like, look, it's not even the most flashy musicians. Individually, they're not the most famous jazz musicians, but together you listen to like a saxophone tutti, like a special of a section. And it's literally like a harmonized pedal, right? Yeah. It's like the same breathing, the same articulation, the same ornaments. It's just the time is just incredible. Yeah. So huge advocate for touring. I wish we could all do it, of course. The touring requires a lot of work, preparation, budget, but it's the best.
Yeah. And is there anything you want to plug? Is there anything you want to tell about that is coming up that like you wanna?
Well, there's too many cool projects to mention, so I will just mention one really passion project I've been working on lately. That's with my dear friend and colleague Marty Eninga. He's the bass player and musical director of Karsu. Because we kind of informed that we're going to have a sabbatical year, we decided, hey, let's meet up and make some music together, just for fun. The good old days, no commercial reason, not for money, not for anything, just to make it pleasurable for us to work on music. And we literally did it. We're going to be called, most likely, Brooklyn Birds Club.
Brooklyn Birds Club.
Yes.
Cool.
And we just kind of wrapping up our first EP. That's kind of like instrumental, indie-ish, psychedelic, a little bit kind of duo. Mm-hmm. Think anywhere from Air to Kuan Bing or something. And we're really in the last few tweaks of the EP. Nice. The EP is probably going to be called Pelicano. Going to be shared in the next few months on all streaming platforms. We're very excited about this. I'm really, really happy with the result. And hopefully we're going to make more and more and more albums like that. So check it out. Brooklyn Birds Club.
Check it out. And man, Jessy, having you here was great. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much, man. What a pleasure, man. It's as you said, we're used to do it, but now with the cameras makes it kind of different but special.
I mean, Jesse is one of my favorite guitar players. I can say it I'll put my hand in the fire, and we're going to do some of this
Let's do
this
it.
residency stuff. And also Joran and all that. There's like such an amazing community in Amsterdam. Just like something I want to say that it's like I'm one of the reasons I'm doing this podcast also, it's because the community is so amazing here, and I want to like get all these really great people that I just got to meet.
Right. And I love how it's like one big circle, but with like its own little circles in it.
Exactly.
But kind of everybody knows everybody. If you're like in the jet, soul, funk, anything around, you kind of know already each other.
Exactly.
And there's so many incredible players and music. I love it. It's like it's such a pleasure. Like,
it's very colorful and very like edgy, and you have really traditional stuff, and you have very esoteric, bizarre, artistic. Like it will be shown in a gallery that like
and everything in
come.
between, which I really like. If you look at Joran, his own project, it's such great example of how to kind of like mix, tradition with like just entertainment a little bit, and like I love it, and all the musicians there in the band are some of my favorite people.
Yeah, great.
Marmusha Orchestra, I must shout out to you and to Said and to everybody who made that happen, because even though you're no longer a member, you did so much to make it happen, and I want to tell everybody now, shout out to actually Avishai himself, because I think this project is really, really special. I really feel happy and privileged that I was able to join this several years ago.
Definitely.
I learned so much from it, and I think first of all, it's really nice to bring people from so many cultures together in a band. It's always great. B, it's such incredible players on all departments.
That was
it's
what
the
we
creme de la
did.
creme, of Dutch music scene, and inspiring every day. Like you get a really difficult new project like this album you guys see here, the Sahara Koyo. Might seem simple to play, but hey, it's some heavy duty shit. And so to get to first rehearsal and see how everybody already nailing, like man,
we spent I think 12 days in the studio. It was really a massive production, re-recording stuff, checking.
And
like
yet the
mixing.
tracking was what, 1 day, 2 days? We tracked the whole album, I think.
No. We tracked it 5 days.
5 days was it?
We tracked it. Yeah, if I put all the sections together. Because I tracked also the strings, I tracked also the winds.
I see, but the
rhythm section was 2 days.
2 days, right?
Yeah,
the whole
2
album.
days, yeah.
But man, I mean, Mehdi is a monster. But everyone on this album, man, really check it out. This is one of my favorite albums from Marmusha Orchestra, Sahara Koyo with Mehdi Nasuli. Really,
it was really. Also, it was kind of like this. It's interesting because we wanted to accommodate the artist as much as possible, meaning that like. Usually when like big institutions or orchestras are working on these type of projects, they're like, this is the repertoire, this is what is possible. You know, in like the, let's say, in the
range of what we do.
Yeah, in the frame of what is possible, not just what we do, of what is possible in terms of time and money, resources, all that stuff. And there, because of Corona, funny enough, and because we had resources to invest, massive amounts of resources, we were like, we're going to take it to the furthest of the furthest. And that's why this album is so unbelievably like versatile. It's 9 pieces, right? 9 pieces of just really 9 different
musical
places.
Journeys.
9 different places of the Maghreb in general. And that's why we called it Sahara Koyo, because Sahara Desert. And Koyos are the students of the master of the Muallim in Gnawa, and it was like the desert of the Koyos, basically Sahara Koyo. Because how you greet in the Gnawa is Saha Koyo. Saha Koyo. So it's just adding that R, Sahara Koyo, and like for me it was school, because it was like, whoa, like the strings and the winds and writing all of that and mixing it later and
we
editing.
all learned so much from each other with this project, and shout out to Mehdi Nasuli himself, coming up with amazing music and vibes for days. Man, I feel like we all learned so much doing this project, and in general doing all these projects. I've learned so much, and I got great opportunity to also try and actually use all these, microtonal music I've been working on, at home, and all these language I've been working on for years, even growing up. Growing up in the Middle East, your influence, regardless if you want or not, in your subconscious, you're gonna have Greek taverna music, you're gonna have Turkish
Exactly.
bağlama music, you're gonna have Arabic oud, and Taksim music, you're gonna have all sorts of North African, Levant, Middle Eastern. So this kind of, you grow up with it, and then essentially you find the day where you start actually practically realizing it and working your craft.
Yeah.
And then comes a product like Marmucha, which allows me to actually now facilitate.
Yeah, it's
all
funny
of
because
that.
I heard you playing in the eye museum, like eye film thing. You were playing like the Fairuz thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, listen, I was like, wow, this thing is like, it's. I mean, it was, you played it slow, but it was like, I was like, wow, this sounds like legit. I was
wow,
like,
thank you.
This sounds legit. I was like, is Muhammad there? Oh no, like Ishai playing it.
Fretless guitar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then I was like, the quarter tone sounds legit. I
Thank
was
you
really
so
like,
much.
it's really there.
Still, a learning process every day with microtonal and.
But man, microtonal, that's the thing. It's really a little bit tribaled,
Oh, 100%.
It's like in the sense of, if you go to Morocco, it's so different. If you go to Egypt, it's so different. You go to Turkey, and each camp is kind of like...
It's a whole world. And what people don't even... Last thing I'll say about it is that the notion is, the common belief is that, okay, quarter tones is like a note that is in between, two Western, notes, whatever, between a C and a C sharp, we'll have another note. And in Arabic music, to an extent, that's kind of true. Every tradition will tune it a little different based on also situation, but there will be more or less 24 notes in an octave in place of 12. But Turkish, what they call Turkish classical music, is a whole other realm in which they kind of incorporated well-tempered and just tuning systems. And they figured a system in which, in 200 cents, between a full step tone in Western music, they have 9 notes.
Wow.
They call it commas. And so actually it's slightly smaller than eighth tones, even. 9 notes instead of 4 in Arabic and 2 in Western. So when you talk, okay, here's a makambayati in Arabic, okay, second degree. Man, no. In Turkey, if you do a trill, you use the 4th comma. If you ascend, 5th, 6th comma. If you descend, there's a gravitational note, needs to go through 2nd and 1st comma, back down home. Oh, if you modulate to this key. Man, the book of rules is insanely vast. I don't think in 10 lifetimes I'll be able to master it, but a little bit.
However, that's the thing with the rules. They're very, very flexible. Right. Why? Because...
it's all here.
That's the thing. It's an emotional journey. And then when it kind of arrived to the West, that's what I saw, at least like with the Andalusian music, when it arrived to the West, it started to become more institutionalized. And when it started to become more institutional, let's say when it was westernized, like when Westerners came and loved it and this, and they wanted to put it like in a book, or they wanted to
notate it.
Exactly. So you have to kind of put it in like fixed patterns. And these fixed patterns, they're not something that is
super representative of how the tradition works.
Exactly. It's not. And that's why,
it's
like,
father to son. And back in those days, I think, and to this day, in India, in many places around the world, when you go to a master, a friend of mine just went to Ivory Coast to study with a master of percussion of West African music. And they go the old school way. The old school way is you live at their house. In this case, in some Unity had in his house in the capital of Ivory Coast. And I know that many people do it in India. You live at the master's. It could be 3 months. It could be 3 years when you are a young child.
Exactly.
And every day you sit in front of the master and you imitate. And he plays and you play and he play and you play. Sessions of hours. And all these traditions we're talking about, like what you said, they've been westernized and kind of put into a system in a box. But essentially it's all kind of like you hear, you grow to it, you understand, you pass it to the next generation. And that's where also it develops differently in different regions around the world.
It's really similar to language.
100%.
Really, it's
look at Moroccan Arabic dialect and
completely
Levant Arabic dialect, and the half island of Arabia. And really see.
Imagine we hear someone that's even 20 years in Israel. You hear a slight accent immediately because it's a physical reaction. It's not like because when he says the letter bet, he makes it a little bit too round instead of too straight. We don't think about it. It's just your
notice.
body.
You just notice.
Okay, you're
and same with music, I guess.
For sure.
If you play to a real traditionalist oud player, the way I play Bayati, you will be made like a little suspicious.
Even dismissive. Even dismissive. That's the thing that just it's the third time we're going to close the podcast.
Right.
But
third time's a charm, though.
Exactly. But I want to say that like where we're heading, in my opinion, like I'll generalize it, we're heading towards, let's say, a more, I don't like the word inclusive, but a broader sense of perception of styles, a broader sense of perception of where people are coming from. Even though it looks like we're going into more tribalism, I believe that it's the last, like, let's say, push of
back.
Yeah, it's the last push of kind of like traditionalism to be completely incorporated,
Policed.
completely incorporated actually with modern, or let's say liberal ideas. And if someone is playing makam in a way that is not completely traditional, they're coming from a different country, that is actually a sign of a lot of respect. It's a sign of actually people wanting to learn that.
And intention matters.
Exactly.
When they talk about a word I'm not a big fan of, which is cultural appropriation, I believe it all comes down to actual genuinity. If you do something because you love and appreciate and admire and want to grow into it and learn it seriously, why not? Doesn't matter where you come from, how you look like. We love it if you come and check our traditional music. I think most of the people around the world would agree with it. However, if you use it in a non-genuine way and it's just a gimmick that you want to show, oh, look at me, I can do some Arabic, and then you kind of whoring it down in a way, that's where I agree with it. That's where I think it's not cool. So I'm with you. I think liberalism is very important in music as long as people come from a really nice and modest place. I want to learn, I want to grow, I love what you guys doing, I want to learn more about it. But if you do that and that's your intention, man, mix it, be my guest, mix it with whatever you want, make a fusion of everything. That's what we do anyhow as humans all over the world, right? The modern world allowed us to know each other. With conservatorium, 70 students in a class from 65 countries. And then you sit in the canteen and you talk and you realize, hey, we're all the same humans. It's cool, but we all have this like kind of like unique angle on things, and it's really nice, you know? So I really love that, actually.
Man, but what a great way to end the podcast. Again, thank you, brother.
Thanks so much, man. What a pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
Likewise, like and subscribe. You know the whole routine. Follow Jessy Hay on all socials. We're going to roll out like a marketing scheme for that, so you're gonna check everything that he's doing. And thank you all for joining us, and see you at the gig.
Have a nice one. Thank you.